The United Nations General Assembly designated January 27, the anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camps, as International Holocaust Remembrance Day, a time to remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust, the Shoah, and the millions of other victims of Nazi persecutions. As we are witnessing an alarming rise of anti-Semitism around the globe, especially since October 7, 2023, it's more important than ever for us to recognize the critical lessons of the Holocaust, of Holocaust history, as we commemorate the victims and honor the survivors. There will be several commemorations, including in the plenary session of the European Parliament, where we are recording this new edition of the European report. Anti-Semitism in its different forms is alarming and present all over Europe and elsewhere, whether in the streets, in universities, or on social media. According to a recent survey, more than half of European Jews are thinking about leaving the continent, and an anti-Semitic incident is occurring every 15 minutes. How can we explain, for example, that less than 2 weeks before the ceremony of International Remembrance Day, 2 schools in Brussels have decided to refuse to participate in a Holocaust ceremony in the city. It's particularly shocking as schools have a moral, civic, and human duty to transmit the reality of the Holocaust to the next generation. In this edition of the European report, we are going to discuss the political situation in Europe in view of the commemoration of the 18th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. In the studio today, we are pleased to have Lukas Mandl, member of the European Parliament from Austria since 2017, a member of the European People's Party, the largest political group in the Parliament, and Lukas Mandl sits in the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. And we have also founding director of the European Coalition for Israel, Tomas Sandell, sorry. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz from European Jewish Press and Europe-Israel Press Association. This is a new episode of European Report. I will start with you, Lukas Mandl. As we speak, your home country, Austria, is scrambling to form a coalition government under the leadership of Herbert Kickl of the Freedom Party, a party founded by a former SS officer and accused of right-wing extremism. The first time that the party was in the government several years ago, in 2000, it faced a collective boycott from the European Union, I remember. Since then, the far right has gained momentum and is today represented in a number of EU member states, member governments, including Italy, Hungary, Slovakia, Netherlands, and Finland. I remember that you once told that when you were deputy mayor of your city near Vienna, you said that the Freedom Party at that time opposed the your creation of a Holocaust memorial in the city. And I would like to have your assessments of the role of the Freedom Party in a future Austrian government and the rise of far right in general in Europe.
Well, thank you first of all for having me and for organizing this again. Also thank you for the question, because many people think about that and are curious on these questions. First, I have to mention that the first time the Freedom Party was in government was in 1970 already, in a coalition with the at that time Socialist Party, today's Social Democratic Party. It's the same party, just changed the name. And the SS officer you just mentioned, the former SS officer, was even a government member at that time as a minister in this 1970 government. I only, let's say that for historic reasons, but it's true. Thank you for remembering that. It's many years ago, but it's true that when I was a vice mayor of my hometown, Gerasdorf, I was working together with academics and experts team from various different fields, historians and others, on the commemoration on a forced labor camp where Jewish Hungarians were detained in the year 1944. And what the local Freedom Party at that time did was sending a leaflet to each and every household in my hometown with the title saying, Mandl, that's me, searching for a camp. And the text would have said, there was never a camp, but Mandl pretends to search one. This was more or less the really awful message, and of course proved wrong after a year of research by academics and experts. The federal president of Austria has assigned the head of the Freedom Party to form a government. This is the usual procedure in Austria, that the federal president would assign somebody to form a government, and this person would then, after a specific period of time, come back to the president and present a possible government. And then it would be up to the federal president to put the government in place. So the Freedom Party had won the election. This is most important to say, to understand better the circumstances. Federal President, in the first step, refused to hand over this assignment to form a government to the head of the Freedom Party. But after negotiations failed, negotiations between my party, the Social Democrats and the Liberals, the President has decided to hand over this assignment to the head of the Freedom Party. I have some understanding for this decision of the federal president, and now we will see where coalition negotiations will lead to. One thing is given. You mentioned the European People's Party group, the largest group in European Parliament. My party is the Austrian branch of the European People's Party group, and even more than that, already before EU membership of Austria, my party in my home country, Austrian People's Party, was the clearly European party, the party advocating for the values of the political West, the party in favor of the values of our civilization. And this will remain, and if such a government will be formed, my party will have a huge responsibility to remain, I would say, the keeper taking care of these before mentioned values. But time will show where things lead to. And thank you for putting it, let's say, in the larger frame of developments in other countries too. So I absolutely do not want to claim there would not be a crisis in Austria, because there is a crisis in Austria, in my home country, and I very clearly feel it. But we have other examples all over the world, actually, and especially in Europe, of times of crisis. And we have had times of crisis since maybe 2015, if we include the migration crisis and then others. Times of crisis make extremist powers increasing. We have anti-European attitudes in the government of Slovakia, of Hungary. We had a lot of struggle in the Netherlands, the home country of my mother, by the way, so I'm half Dutch in that sense. And I don't know what will happen after Macron in France. I'm also concerned here how this vacuum will be filled in France. Maybe a field which you also mentioned I see a bit different is Italy. In my view and in my observation, the Italian government is clearly pro-European, clearly pro-Western, clearly pro-civilization. So I will always be critically observing as a parliamentarian. This is my obligation, but I have the impression that the Italian government must not be put on the same page as the Slovakian, the Hungarian, and maybe other concerning developments. We even had to repeat an election in Romania. Even the election of the federal president had to be repeated due to influence far beyond what would be acceptable. I mean, influence from outside is never acceptable at all, and it was obviously from outside influenced, and that's why to the inside it was not a proper, free and fair election. So we live in concerning times. That's why I appreciate that we have a stable European level. We have a better commission than the last commission. I would say the majorities in the European Parliament are also better majorities as in the Parliament before. So we can also see these positive elements and use in the best way we can these positive elements for the sake of stabilization of our continent, of the political scenery generally, and it's the economy what's on people's minds very much at the moment, because we are in a recession. We are in a recession, and this will cause even more of, let's say, the negative side effects of a crisis we have seen since 2015 already.
Tomas Sandell, your organization, European Coalition for Israel, did a survey last year, which showed that parties on the so-called far right that we spoke about is by large the more supportive of Israel. Can you please elaborate on the results of the survey, and what is your stance on the Freedom Party in particular?
Well, thank you, Yossi, and thank you, Lukas Mandl. When it comes to Austria, I'm not trying to outsmart my friend Lukas Mandl. He knows better than anyone what the Freedom Party stands for. Obviously, I would look at it from a macro perspective, mentioning the rise of the far right, the populist right, which we also have in my own country, in Finland, where they are part of the government coalition. I think my general recommendation is to say that we cannot ignore an electorate once it reaches a critical threshold, say 20%, 25%. We have to engage with them in some constructive ways. Generally speaking, from what we've seen the last 30 years, when a populist party enters a government coalition, they tend to moderate their stances, which also means that in the next election, they don't have the same traction. And before this program, we had a small discussion, and you mentioned the former Chancellor Kurz in Israel, who apparently was on the record to say that when he was leading the government with Freedom Party as a junior colleague, they never disagreed on issues, especially related to the Middle East and to Israel. And interestingly enough, if we understood him correctly, issues related to antisemitism. In Italy, and I would share Lukas Mandl's assessment on Italy. I think Italy has shown a pragmatic view forward, where Meloni has evolved as something as a kingmaker. Then we'll have to remember that the world's only superpower right now is going into a political era with a lot of the same trademarks as a populist right-wing movement. So apart from being a European phenomena, this is a global phenomena, and something that will require a lot of engagement, discussions, and assessments. But when it comes to the Freedom Party, only from looking at our vote ranking, they were more or less on the same level as the Volkspartei. But going back to what Lukas Mandl said, that would make me extremely concerned. And to the extent that we could see similar expressions today in Austria, I would really raise a red flag.
Lukas Mandl, I mentioned in my introduction to this program that Europe is preparing to mark the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, with the main ceremony to be held in Auschwitz, which will mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration and extermination camps. For many months, the Polish government made it clear that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was not welcome in Poland, as there is an arrest warrant on him from the International Criminal Court, the ICC. In other words, the Polish government was threatening to arrest the democratically elected leader of the Jewish state, and this on the same soil where millions of Jews were murdered only 80 years ago. But last week, after international pressure, the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, intervened in the debate, and this resulted in the government of Poland to change its stance, its position, and it allowed the Prime Minister of Israel to attend the commemoration. So I would like to have your comments on this situation and this reversal of the position in Poland.
This whole episode shows how absurd the arrest warrant is. I mean, I will be all my life a fighter for separation of powers, and I highly appreciate the independent judiciary. And at the same time, it harms the whole structure, it has to be said, when courts start to do politics. It's also a problem when politics start to behave as if they were courts. It's just wrong. So I guess each branch in the separation of powers should do its own. Executive work, legislative lawmaking, and courts should do court work, and the court presenting an arrest warrant against the Prime Minister of Israel obviously did politics, bad politics, by the way, and they issued the arrest warrant even the same day as the arrest warrant for terrorists, for the very same terrorists that attacked Israel October 7, 2023. So I can't even imagine how such a decision can appear, but it happened, and then the episode went on. As grotesque, that's the only expression you can use for it, as you just explained it, that it could have happened that the Prime Minister of the only Jewish state on earth wouldn't have been able to attend the commemoration in Auschwitz directly. So, of course, I appreciate the final decision from the Polish side to repair that, but it should never have been to be repaired in the first place, because the whole story is absurd. And I guess maybe all of us should remember what our civilization is about, and that's very much connected to what we commemorate in Auschwitz.
Especially when several other countries in Europe have said that they wouldn't issue any warrant if the Prime Minister of Israel would come in their country. So I saw it in France, I saw it in other countries. So big difference. Tomas Sandell, on the same topic, your organization, European Coalition for Israel, issued last week a press release on this diplomatic incident with Poland, calling this incident a grave injustice and a travesty on international law and justice. Can you elaborate this particular point?
I think Lukas Mandl did an excellent elaboration. It's so clear, it's so obvious, it doesn't even need to be repeated. Other than to say that I think this was also a good expression of how civil society can have an impact, both in Poland, because in Poland it started with colleagues and partners of us issuing an open letter to the government, just pointing out how absurd this would be and asking the government to revise its decision. We then issued our press release mutual friend David Harris, formerly with American Jewish Committee, he wrote an opinion editorial, and it didn't take long before the president saw how this would backfire against the international perception of Poland, and then contacted the government to say that we have to do something about it. And then again, half a day, and the government, they made it clear that there would be no arrests. I would go a little bit further and I say I'm not still 100% satisfied with the stance of the Polish government. It's not enough to say that we are not going to arrest the Israeli Prime Minister. He should receive an official invitation to attend the event, which, as far as I know, has not happened yet.
Absolutely. Lukas Mandl, we spoke about the rise in anti-Semitism, which has never reached such a level since the Holocaust, and 80 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, and especially after the Hamas terrorist attack on the 7th of October. How can we stop this rise? Because is there still time to stop this? Isn't it too late? My question.
We must never think it's too late, because we must never stop in fighting antisemitism and in fostering Jewish life. I would say antisemitism is not an issue that regards only to Jewish people, but to everybody. I mean, antisemitism harms our societies, harms our civilization, puts hatred in hearts and souls of people, even of children, of young people. And it's fueled time and again, no matter what happens. The one or the other direction is fueled by anti-Semites and anti-Semitic ideology time and again. That means everybody sane and sober has a share of responsibility to fight anti-Semitism. Nobody is excluded. I really have to say it, because there's also nobody excluded from the affection anti-Semitism has on the whole society. That's the first important point, in my view. The second is, it's not enough to fight anti-Semitism. Important is that Jewish people can live and dwell freely without fear of attacks or of discrimination or of any kind of anti-Semitic incidents in their lives. And we are in today's Europe far away from that. And this leads me to my third point. I just want to convey, as an elected official on European level, to Jewish people within Europe, please remain. Please remain. It would be a loss for Europe to lose you. I understand many want to leave, or at least are considering to leave, and they have obvious reasons for it. But let's fight anti-Semitism. I mean, everybody. And to Jewish people, I really want to convey the message: please stay and please continue to make Europe even better through your presence and through your contribution to European identity. And Jewish life is a core part of European identity, has been one always, and is today one, and has to remain one.
Tomas, Sandell, you have committed the last 22 years to combat against anti-Semitism. Still, Jew hatred is more rampant than ever. Do you consider this as a personal failure, or how do you cope with it?
Well, I just saw a very new research from Anti-Defamation League and Today, which said that 50% of adults worldwide hold anti-Semitic feelings, and more so the younger they are. So, for example, 40% of people under 35 would agree with the statement to say that Jews are somehow responsible for all the wars in the world. So when you read that, of course, you have reasons to get discouraged. I think I would mention two reasons why I don't feel that these 22 years have been lost in any way. One is, of course, as you know, last year we did 2 youth academies, bringing young people from all across Europe to the European Parliament to learn, to connect them with other friends and to meet MEPs like Lukas Mandl so that they can take on this fight. And to see their passion and commitment really gives me hope for the next 22 years. Finally, as you know, we always say European Coalition for Israel is a coalition of all the others. And I think this really makes a difference that we have people like Lukas Mandl, other members of the European Parliament, Katharina von Schnobein, who are not part of the Jewish community, but feel that this is our responsibility, as you just said, to make sure that there's a future for Jewish life in Europe.
My last question is for both of you. In one sentence, what would be your message to the viewers regarding International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and especially because I think it's important, and you mentioned it, this is not the task only of decision makers, but of the society in general. What would be the message in one sentence?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I would say the message is it's important to have public events. We will have one here in the European Parliament. We will have one, for example, in the United Nations premises in Vienna, in the home capital of my home country, Austria. I will attend it. There will be many public events. The one in Auschwitz you have just mentioned before. It's important to have it, but maybe more important than ever, it will be this year to talk and to reflect about the issue among friends and family, in your private life, in your personal life, each and everybody. It's not about only officials speaking at stages, which is important. It's also about our own personal view and reflection on it, and to exchange among humans personally, not in social media, maybe in social media too, no matter if it's positive, if the message is right, I mean, but from person to person, from human to human, to speak about it, to reflect about it. This would be my recommendation for everybody.
Tomas, Sandell, the same question. One sentence.
Very short. Don't give up. Fight, fight, fight.
This brings us to an end of this edition. I would like to thank MEP Lukas Mandl and the founding director of the European Coalition for Israel, Tomas Sandell, for joining this program. To our readers, as always, if you like our program, please feel free to share the YouTube link with your friends and colleagues. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz, and you have just watched the European Report. See you again next month.